Okay, we're live. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Darian Talks UTSA. I got to get used to saying that. Um, excited about today's episode. There's been a lot of news and a lot of stuff dropping over the last couple of days. I've commented on some of it on the Twitter. If you guys follow me on there, that's Darian underscore at UT or no Darian underscore UTSA. Make sure you guys go and follow there. I post a lot there throughout the week. Um, so yeah, that is where you can find me for the most part. But anyway, there was a lot um that's come out. We got the AD who signed an extension. I have some thoughts about that because I thought the reception from that was quite interesting. Also want to talk about UTSA having 15 people, 15 players on the basically preseason Athlon Sports All AAC team. I think that's pretty significant, and I think it sort of starts to set the stage for what the expectation is for UTSA coming up this season. I think I have some interesting thoughts about that as well. And there's just a number of topics on UTSA that I'm going to talk about. There's a few comments that I'm going to jump into too. So, one of them coming from Twitter, and then I think we got one already in the chat. So make sure you guys fill the chat with your comments and questions, and we'll get those talked about and answered and all that good stuff. Right? You know the drill. Also, if you're new here, if you're not new here, if you're watching or whatever, smash a like on the video. That always helps the channel out. Also, subscribe to the show if this is your first time being here and you like what's going on. And you can join also if you really want to support the channel and support what we got going on and that sort of thing. You can join as a member. I would really appreciate that as well. But anyway, with the housekeeping stuff out of the way, let's jump into sort of the first topic I want to talk about, and that is mostly that is UTSA's returning players getting all the recognition. So I'm going to pull this up to make sure I have it, so I'm referencing this right. I tweeted about it earlier today, but I think this came out yesterday. So Athlon Sports posted a preseason All AAC team, and UTSA had 15 folks on it. I thought it was weird they had a fourth team. Typically, you see like first team, second team, third team, and then an honorable mention. They actually had a fourth team, which is interesting to me. But anyway, so on the first team, you had Chase Allen, punter kicker. You had or place kicker. You had Kavorian Barnes. Obviously a running back that is started for us. Brandon Brown, defensive lineman, that's a no-brainer. Oscar Cardenas, Joe Evans, Jamal Liggin, and Danye Taylor, all getting first team honors. Second team, you had Devin McEwen, Corey Godinett, Ken Robinson, Jamori Robinson, Vinlay Tatafu. I know I'm probably butchering that, but you had him on there as well. And I thought that was interesting. We had two offensive line guys on it. Then on the fourth team, they put JT Clark, Makai Hart, and Robert Henry. I thought that was interesting as well. So here are my just initial thoughts on this preseason. This thing. I'm glad that the guys are getting all the recognition that a lot of them deserve. I think when you just look at the guys who they did call out, it's been guys who have been starters, guys who've been playing, who made impact plays for us overall. And I think whenever we think about coming into the season, a lot of the discourse around what this season is going to hinge on is really around that quarterback position, right? Like everybody is worried about what the quarterback's going to do. I myself am worried about that as well. But one thing we must not forget, and I think these sort of preseason polls sort of remind us, is that we have a ton of good players already, and I think we don't necessarily give. Well, I can't say we don't, but I think we're so caught up. We've been so caught up in the quarterback discussion that sometimes we forget that like we got great talent and great weapons around them, and we got good guys coming back on the defense. There's obviously some big gaps and holes that we need to fill just based on players leaving out. Obviously, their quarterback is another one, a big position, but corner and some of the guys at safety as well is going to be important. Obviously, that O line is going to be important to button up as well. So I just think that it was kind of good to see this thing come out and see some of our guys get recognition. One thing that I thought was interesting, also throughout the week, and I'm gonna go to his Twitter page right now, but it was funny to me that when what I've been seeing from Jeff Traylor is he's sort of taking this sarcasm approach of like, oh my God, UTSA still has good players. No way, right? Whenever this came out, he quote retweeted UTSA football and said, "Oh my God, we still got good players. No way." And then there was one that came before that, right? So when you had Athlon Sports, you also had Dave Campbell's Texas football preseason all college team. And when you look at that one, we had a couple guys on the first team who got first team honors. We had Brandon Brown. Of course, that's not that's not a surprise. You have Vinlay Tatafu, who was also first team honors on that. Second team honors, you had Kavorian Barnes, you had Chase Allen, and you had defensive lineman Joe Evans. So and this was the day before, he said, he said, "What? Frank Harris is gone. UTSA still has players left," and he puts his crying emojis, crying, laughing emojis, with that. So I think the funny thing, man, is that like he is sort of sticking it to folks, and probably folks like me who are. I'm not saying he's like, I'm sure he doesn't watch this, but I just think the general discourse around UTSA, and I'm sure he's getting a lot of questions on like, well, what are you going to do now that Frank's not here? And I just think it's funny that he's sticking it back at everybody who's kind of questioning UTSA, what next year is going to look like, because Frank's not going to be there, and him just kind of acknowledging like, yo, we still got ballers on the squad. We're going to reload. This is not one player doesn't make a team type situation. So I thought that was cool. I think I sort of like him taking that approach, right? Because, we are now in a position where people expect UTSA to come in and be great. People expect UTSA to come in and produce and come in and compete for conference titles. And I think what this does, and what us, him being questioned and the team sort of being questioned, all that's going to do is put a chip on their shoulder whenever the season starts, right? And I think he's sort of doing that. I think him doing this publicly and kind of making a joke out of it and kind of coming at people and with this kind of sarcasm play, it really gives you sort of a peek behind the curtain on what type of things that he's talking to his team about, what type of things that he's talking to the staff about, right? You know, what it shows is they hear the discourse surrounding UTSA and surrounding what it means to, be outside of now the Frank Harris era. And I think they have a chip on their shoulder around that. And he knows that, people are saying, hey, we're now going to see, this is going to be the season that we see his recruits, be the focal point of the team and not necessarily guys from the Frank Wilson era, right? And I think he's probably sticking it to folks on that as well. So a lot to prove for UTSA. I think there's a lot of stuff that Coach Traylor probably wants to prove to supporters, people who doubt us, people around the conference and all that type of stuff. So yeah, I just thought a lot of that stuff is interesting. Obviously, it's great that these guys are getting recognition, but yeah, I just think some of it's going to be interesting. Make sure you guys hit that comment section. I'm gonna start with the first comment that came in from Victor Bonilla on Twitter. He said, "I remember Sosa's senior year, and this is in reply to sort of my my initial thoughts on like us, UTSA having 15 players on this preseason all AAC thing." But he said, "I remember Sosa's senior year, the O-line led the nation in sacks given up, with most of them coming back. The following year, they struggled miserably with a new quarterback at the helm. I'm guessing said quarterbacks had issues identifying blitzers. Hope that's not the case." I think to sort of his point, us having good old linemen coming back, yeah, that obviously is going to be something that helps a new quarterback, but that's not going to be the end all be all. I think he's right to say you got to make sure you're calling out blitzes. You got to make sure you don't hold on to the ball, because the linemen are only going to be able to block so long. So I think that's one element of it, right? On the picking up blitzes, but I just think there's a lot of different layers onto what success is going to mean at that quarterback position. I think there's and we've talked about it a lot, but um, it's just going to be a challenge, I think, early on. And having a good O line is certainly going to help us, but it's not going to be the end all be all. Let's go with the first comment we have here. We're a little light in the comments today. Y'all quiet. What's up? Um, Rob says, which redshirt freshman will be the next Pee Wee? And then he says, is Lisa Campos Mount Rushmore for UTSA athletics? What's a brother got to do to jump on the podcast? Okay, let's start with the Lisa Campos bit. Actually, I'll go to that one last because I see that's sort of a topic I wanted to discuss in general. Which redshirt freshman will be the next Pee Wee? I don't know. I don't know, to be completely honest. It's hard to predict a first year player that's going to come in and automatically do something, right? That one's difficult. I don't have a great answer for you. I'll be happy whenever we see him, right? But the hardest thing unless you're just getting a guy that's like a complete home run from somewhere or something like that. That's one thing, and you kind of know that they're going to step in and play. But a lot of those freshmen and a lot of redshirt freshmen and things like that, I feel like they have to. They are folks who have to, fight for positions. It's going to be hard for them to win a job in camp, and if they do win a job in camp, um, you know, what does that look like, right? So I don't know. And then he said, "What's a brother got to do to jump on the podcast?" Listen, I'm open for doing that type of stuff. If more of you guys want to be on a podcast, just shoot me a DM. We can get it set up. What I do plan on doing, especially for some of these live shows, is something that I've started to plan. You'll see a lot more as we get closer to the season. But I'm gonna have folks sort of come in. Like if typically I do this show for about an hour, I'm gonna start having 10-minute blocks where we have like a JJ will come on, or a Glasgow may show up, or whoever wants to show up. But yeah, I'm definitely open to having you guys come on as well if you like to. So yeah, just shoot me a DM. We can get it set up and we can go from there. But yeah, want to jump into the question a little bit more on the Lisa Campos Mount Rushmore. He asks, is Lisa Campos on the Mount Rushmore for UTSA athletics? And I see Bob Enriquez, his comment on Lisa getting her new contract is right below that. Here's what I'll say. Here's what I'll say about that. I am more glad that we are making the investment in someone long term versus sort of having these, situation where people come in, they do something, and then we get them out, right? Obviously, like you think about when Lynn Hickey was here and how she started the program and things like that. She had a very clear plan and a very clear assignment in terms of coming in, starting the program, getting it to a certain level, and then we're going to bring somebody else in. And we've obviously done that. And I think it's just a continuation of an investment that they're making in Dr. Campos. And I think that in itself is good because it allows somebody, and I spoke about this a little bit on Twitter, but it allows somebody to come in and grow and learn and adapt. And I think where you get into trouble is when you don't grow, learn, and adapt. And I think if you think about this time last year, people were, if I could show you some of the DMs I was getting about her specifically and some of the calls that very important people around the program made to me specifically. You know, in upset with some of the decisions and some of the moves that she's made. If I could, if I could, we go back a year of time. That's why I say if someone had logged off of Twitter a year ago and then logged on to Twitter today and seen that, and then seen the reception of how happy everybody is that she's getting this, they'd probably be surprised because a year ago, the vote didn't go well, and people were upset. We Coach Traylor has been complaining about the covered practice pavilion and all of that stuff. It wasn't happening. We hadn't heard anything from an NIL standpoint. We talked, from her at all, and that sort of thing. There's a lot of folks that was around, the NIL space, and it's not that. And I asked, previous guests about this while they were here, and she's just been she has been sort of contentious with that, to be completely honest, based on what I've heard, right? Just from various people around the space or in the know. She's been a little contentious with NIL and has been a little bit slow to come around on the idea of NIL and really shifting the overall fundraising strategy to be inclusive of NIL, right? And not necessarily inclusive of, we need to raise all the money for campus stuff and that type of stuff, which is all great, but we can't ignore this big piece on the NIL side, because that's going to determine if we can keep talent, recruit talent, and bring a really good talent in that's going to keep us competitive. And I think what we've seen over the past year, and which is why I think people are high on her and happy that she's been able to sign this extension. I think you've seen her slowly adapt, right? Like it took us a while. We got Coach Traylor's cover pavilion. I can tell you this. I don't know if I've shared this before. Um, I won't give. I don't know how public. I think they put out the number that they paid for the pavilion. I can tell you this, and this I know for a fact. If they would have done that, whenever they first had the opportunity to do it, they would have saved a significant amount of money. We waited that long, and we probably paid 2-3 times more than what was necessary. And I just think things like that, you got to learn, you got to grow from them, right? Can't, and I know that, like, a lot of the money is, whenever you're somebody like that, she's dedicated to uplifting the entire athletics program and not just football. And that obviously is something that's a needle that she's trying to thread. But I just think over time you're starting to see some of those things start to get mitigated a little bit. And then I also continue to point back to, like, she just recently sent out an email, and for the first time, she actually showed public support of NIL. That is, I'm about to knock stuff over here. That is extremely important, and I think that's a big deal for her, because when you look at some of these other ADs and other schools, they are full-fledged running with the NIL game, and they are helping in every way that they can bolster these collectives and get people to donate to these things so we can be big players, so they can be big players in the NIL space. She hadn't done that. She's been a little slow to the party, but I think overall and in general, she is starting to adapt, and that's what I mean. Grow, learn, adapt. And she's starting to do that, and I hope that she continues to do that. And if she does, we'll continue to be successful. But yeah, I definitely want to talk about that a little bit. Mike says, "What's going on, Mike?" He says, interesting high Barnes." Maybe since how high Barnes is rated. I'm not sure he's even the best running back in the room. I thought that was interesting too, if I'm being honest. Now, I'm sure some of it has to do with, how these preseason things go. Man, it's all there are people that are like, there are people who are gonna vote on some of this stuff, and, like, they're not going to be privy to all the information. There's not a freaking computer or something that, like, generates and takes every single thing into consideration. I will say for these folks who did probably vote and put him there, it's like, okay, was this sort of like a cumulative thing over the last couple of years? I'm pretty sure that they just probably looked at statistics to a degree and made their determination off of that, because he was the most productive running back that we had technically in cumulative numbers. And I still think he has a lot of talent, but I think that they probably didn't look at averages very well. They probably didn't cut on the film before they made this. Understand, this is like Athlon is a I don't know if like they're like a huge committee or anything like that, but they're a website like anybody else. And on those websites, like it's just whoever is on the panel and who's the college football experts that works for that site, they're going to get together and do this. And you got to think about it, a lot of those guys are probably covering other schools and other sports and bigger news, and they come in and do that. So, no, I'm not trying to say he doesn't deserve it. I think that dude I think he's a really good player. I think I was over the moon for him coming into last year. He didn't have a great season. I don't think he played to the best of his abilities, but I still think that he's someone that, you know, can contribute, and I'm glad he's getting some recognition. Shout out to the Pops, man. He's representing in the chat. He says with any of the players that left, the current players have the next man up attitude, come in, claim the spot, and have an impact. Absolutely. That's exactly what they're gonna have to do. I think um there's a lot of opportunity for guys to come in and make a name for themselves, to be completely honest. They that's exactly what you want to come into. You want to be in a position to where you can go into fall camp and actually have a chance to come in and contribute. And I think a lot of guys are going to get that opportunity. Obviously, the quarterbacks are really excited about that. The secondary guys, they're going to, it's going to be wide open on who's going to be able to be in that final rotation before they roll out through game one. So it's going to be a lot of guys who's going to have a lot of opportunities, and the coaches are going to roll the balls out, and we're going to see who's in the actual baller for sure. My man ATX, how you doing, brother? He says, do you buy the hype that UTSA, oh, I'm sorry, do you buy the hype that Texas State has been getting in the offseason? To me, they just seem like another Texas Tech air raid offense clone, all offense but no defense. You know what? I agree with that. And here's what I'll say. Those Texas Tech air raid offensive clones or Texas Tech air raid offensive teams, they're tricky. They're tricky teams, man, because they can win a lot of games like that. Like a lot of the times when you have teams with offenses like that, those offenses are typically good enough to shred good defenses in general. What happens is if they have a bad day or a bad quarter or a bad half, because they can't stop anybody, right? Because they can't stop anybody, then they end up losing the game. And the score ends up being like, I don't know, 35-52. Like that's what happens with those types of teams. What I'll say and what makes me a little worried, like, listen, I'm not going to watch or care one thing about Texas State after we play them. Like, I'm just not. So I'm just going to like speak from this I'm going to speak from this like in a way of like what I'm worried about because we played in week 2. The thing that worries me a little bit is that they do seem like they're going to have a high powered offense based on the QB they bring in, and they were better offensively last year. This coach really embraces that side of the ball, and he's kind of he just fits that bill, right? What worries me a little bit is they if they, if they come in with good quarterback play and they are able to put up good numbers, are we going to be at the level at that particular point in the season to be able to combat that? Now, they're going to have to go through an adjustment period as well because they got new guys that they have to integrate into the team. But if they do click early, and listen, we could click early as well. Let's be very clear about that. UTSA can come in, and whoever the starting quarterback is can come in, hit the ground running, and we don't look back from there. That's what I hope happens, right? But the one thing I do fear, just to be completely honest, is, well, what if we don't? What if we stumble a little bit? That's expected. That's expected. Like we have new personnel, new guys that have to get used to each other and things like that. So there's going to be transition period that we go through early in the first couple of games. I worry about going through that against Texas State, of course, but I just think about, you know, they did bring in some big game players, and game two is a big game, right? So we'll see. I don't know. I'll tell you this, in a conference that they're in, I think that offense, to be honest, is going to breed them success. I think when you look at their schedule, they're probably going to have a successful season if they're able to put up a lot of points. Um, but we'll just have to see. Who knows? Mike says you going to the kickoff lunch and Emmitt Smith is the keynote speaker. Should be a great dude. I think I am. I think I am. I was looking at this yesterday. It's not a cheap ticket to get in for sure, but yeah, I think I am. My thing is I want to get one of the nice tables though, and I don't think I'm funding that by myself. So I am. If anybody wants to, if anybody would like to go in on one of those, I definitely do that. I want to get one of the table. I want to I I'm not going to be able to reach the level to where you can guarantee you get to meet him, but I'm a diehard Dallas Cowboy fan. Born and raised, and Emmett being the keynote speaker is intriguing. So it also be good to kind of meet some of the folks, a player or two there, and just kind of talk to folks. I don't get a lot of time being in an environment where there's a ton of UTSA folks. So I think that'll be great. But yeah, I might go to that. I'm really, really thinking about it. My schedule, I think it does fill my schedule, based on the way I'm seeing things of what my August will look like. So yeah, I'll probably figure out a way to be there. He says, Mike says, if Lisa can pull off getting the covered football practice field, which can potentially keep Trailer here a little longer, there's an argument for her being a go AD for UTSA. So is this covered pavilion not? Has it not already been announced? I thought they already. Am I tripping? Hope I'm not sharing something that I'm not supposed to share. I thought they announced this already, that this was coming. I could be wrong, and let me know if I am. But I really thought that they announced that we were getting that. I don't know how soon. I don't know when it'll land, but I thought that they announced that we're going to be getting that. I'll be curious. Let me know if y'all are hearing something different. But I thought I was of the mindset that covered pavilion was already in the works and we've already paid for it. Um, Although we paid a lot, but now I don't even want to talk about it because I don't want to say something I'm not supposed to say. But I thought it was public news. It's got to be. It's got to be. We'll see. Mike says if she doesn't get it done, I think her turn will be considered a failure, even though she's done a lot for the program. Oh yeah, so I'm gonna go back to like her being a go AD, and I'm like, how do we quantify that? I guess there has been a lot of good things that have happened over the course of her tenure, um, but here's what I'll say about before we start awarding goats. A lot of those plans were already in motion before she got here, right? Like, I mean, honestly, if you look at like the Park West facility, um, yeah, if you look at the Park West facility, that stuff was in the works whenever I signed, and that was what 2010. Now, like I said, they told us at the time. I think I talked about this whenever they like announced the facility and the stuff like this before. That was a selling point to me when I was being recruited to UTSA a very, very long time ago. I remember the calls in 2010 where they was I remember I wonder if we still have it somewhere, but I used to have all the stuff that UTSA, all the brochures and all the stuff that they were selling us on. And they had this big thing that was mapped out on what UTSA was going to look like over the next 4 to 7 years. And at that particular time, they were already talking about, they had illustrations for like this whole, all the facilities. Now, their timeline was obviously way too aggressive, because that stuff didn't start to land until I was long gone. And we're starting to see some of this stuff now. But now, does she play a part in like fundraising to make sure we get the money to be able to to deliver on that? Yes, of course. But if I don't know. I'm not trying to like not give her credit, but at the same time, it's like, how do you measure that if some of the plans that was already made, if some of the plans that were delivered that she's getting credit for now were already in the works years ago? But that's just me. But shout out to her though. Good job for her. She's getting paid. She's making, more than a $500,000 a year on salary with a 25K increase every year after that. So I think she's going to get it at some point. She's going to be at like 650 mil or 650K at some point. She's getting paid. Yeah, thank you, Carol. Carol says it was announced that the cover pavilion was a done deal. Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I think they announced it. I want to say they was in the ballpark of about $11 million. Um I think they're paying like 11 million or something like that, or 9 million or something like that. Um for the covered pavilion. We're still paying more than what we should. We're paying a lot more than what we should have been paying, but it is what it is. It is what it is on that. Some of the Yeah, I think the numbers got a little out of hand on that. Yeah, I'm looking at it right here. So, covered pavilion. Yeah, I'm looking at it. Yeah. So what's happening? Oops. I just knocked in my feed here. Okay. ATX says, "Do you think depth and potential talent this year's UTSA team has is the best ever?" Ooh, good question. It's right up there. It's right up there when you look at some of the recruits that we brought in, especially if you're into the whole 4-star, 5-star thing. It's right up there. I think when you look at prospects like a Denver Harris and where he came from and the type of talent that he's supposed to be, or he has the potential to be, I think that's big time. I think when you look at somebody like your JJ Sparkmans and Ian Jacksons and the guys that we're getting from the SEC and all this stuff, and JT Clark coming back, I think that's a big deal as well. I think we have some NFL prospects. I think Brandon Brown is going to get himself a shot in the league. I think we got some big guys that's going to be able to move the needle on some of that stuff. So I think from a talent standpoint, and a potential standpoint, yeah, I do think this is probably deepest that the deepest from a potential standpoint that I think we've been ever. The tricky part with answering that question is, how do you answer that whenever we've had like Frank Harris's and Zachary Franklin's and Joshua Cephas's on the team, and they've come back after they've already had big time seasons. So yeah, listen, I think it probably is, to be completely honest. It probably is. Um let's see, is that all the questions? That is all the questions. I'd be curious to know. I think I got, let's see. One last thing I want to talk about too before we wrap up here is, what does it mean with us having all this depth and potential talent, right? Like, what does that actually mean? When I started thinking about this today, and I'm not going to jump the gun and go there because I've been pretty consistent on trying to make sure that we are level headed whenever we assess what is actually possible with UTSA this year, and not to heap too many big expectations on UTSA. I feel like that's not going to work because when you come out with these things and you got 14 players on a preseason all AAC team, that's going to breed um, expectations in itself. And then when you got your coach sort of, egging on the fact that we have a lot of talent coming back and that sort of thing. So I think the expectations are going to be high in general. But whenever you start thinking about all the talent that we have coming back and the potential talent that you're talking about, ATX, that's going to be, that we could have the most deep roster in UTSA's short history. When you do think about that, it does start to make you wonder about could we win a conference title? Like, could we contend for a conference title? Like, what would that look like? That would mean that we'd have to have really good. We'd have to have really good play, I believe, from the quarterback position, obviously. But I will say that in terms of what will be around him from a skill standpoint, when you look at what we have in that running back room, when you look at some of the receivers that we have a Devin McEwen that's popping up on a lot of these things, and people are expecting him to have a good year after having a really good freshman season. And when you look at what JJ Sparkman did in the spring game, sort of just being the guy that, like, he almost just looked like wide receiver one off the muscle. Then when you think about a JT Clark coming back and how he's going to be able to stretch the field and how he's going to be able to be a goal line threat with his ability to win, tough contested catches in the end zone and win jump balls and things like that. Assuming that he's going to be healthy and be, 80% of what he was before. It just makes you wonder how far can we go next season, and what does what does everyone else in the conference look like? I think, the conference, I think we got some of the most talent that are coming into the conference. I do think from a quarterback standpoint, just because there's so much uncertainty around our quarterback situation, I do think there are teams that are better positioned for success based on what they already know about the quarterbacks that they are going to start. I'm not saying that our quarterbacks won't end up being better than these guys, but the reality is some of these guys that they brought in are experienced guys, or you have guys who've already been at the helm at their respective schools. So I don't know. We'll see. I will say that I am getting more and more confident as time goes on the idea that we will be contending for a conference title. Listen, I am not ever going to be one of those folks that's going to count the chickens before they hatch, because especially whenever we're coming in and we don't know what our quarterback position is going to look like. I don't want to jump the gun, but I will say that I am buying a little bit into the fact that we got a lot of talent. And I trust our coaching staff, to be able to get the most out of that talent. And if they do, I do think the sky's the limit. We got another question that came in from ATX. It says, what position do you think will surprise other teams? Basically, which one is underestimated at the moment? Interesting. I probably would say I don't think our front seven is going to surprise anybody. I think they should be good. I'm probably going to say receiver. And the reason I'll say that is because we have had we had that three-headed monster at receiver, and it scared everybody, right? I mean, I remember at one particular point in time, whenever I was doing the show last year, folks were asking, like, or not last year, the year before, they were talking about, the three-headed monster we had in Zakari, Cephas, and Clark, and they're saying, like, do we have the best wide receiving core, like, or top three wide receiver trio in the nation? And, like, people were really comparing us to that Ohio State bunch at the time. But I think that when you look at that situation, well, obviously we all know the situation with Zakari. Joshua Cephas is doing well with the Jaguars right now. JT Clark is coming off of an injury. a really really bad injury where he missed last season, and he's now in a position where he's going to be coming back, but you don't know. It's uncertain. It's uncertain of what he's going to look like, how he's going to be able to perform. Is he going to still be at the level he was before he got injured? Right. So like I think that people are just going to, in general, sleep on a receiving room. And listen, I'll be honest. Like one of the things that I was frustrated with last year was I didn't think we did not do a great job at beating man coverage outside of Joshua Cephas. Devin McEwen started to do that more and more throughout the season once he got a little bit more comfortable. But outside of those guys, we were getting locked up. Taki Ogle-Kellogg did, he was, I mean, that dude, he was 6'5", 220 pounds. Like he's going to make contested catches just by being out there. And I'm not saying guys didn't make plays, but I'm talking about consistency. I'm talking about on the third down, I know that this guy's probably going to win his one-on-one and he's going to be able to get open for the quarterback, right? I don't think we had a lot of that consistency outside of Joshua Cephas. And I know, like I said, I know Devin McEwen stretched the field really well. He did some good things for us, but I just think we were also play calling in a way to where, we weren't even putting him in those positions. We were just getting him on quick dumps to the outside, running screen plays and things like that to get guys the ball because we couldn't beat people in man coverage as much as we wanted to. We did a lot of scheming to get guys open, but we didn't have a lot of the same, like, we're just going to drop back and I'm going to have my X receiver over here run a comeback and, see if he, can get open for us to get this, second and long, third and long play. Right. So I think that with us reloading at that receiver position, I think, and listen, I'm gonna tell you something right now. I don't know how JJ Sparkman is going to how it's gonna look whenever he's playing against opposing teams. But what he did in that spring game, I was like, yo, we got one on our hands. Contested catches, speed, able to beat the corners in single coverage and things like that. And I just think it's only gonna get better, right? So I think that position has a lot of upside. And I am hopeful that they are able to come in and strut their stuff, to be completely honest. We're going to need it. We're going to need it because we got inexperience at the quarterback position, and our receivers are going to have to help us out as much as possible. And a lot of that's going to mean that, like, I'll say this, more than years in the past, there's going to be a focus on our receivers winning their one-on-ones. Period. It is going to be, you can't have an inexperienced quarterback and then receivers that can't get open. That's a recipe for a losing season. Not saying that's us. I'm just saying, like, if that formula and that profile comes out and we're a team that has those issues, we're going to be in trouble. But I think that the guys that we brought in, some of the stuff I seen at the spring game gives me a lot of confidence, and not just JJ Sparkman. I think there was a couple of other guys that I was really, really impressed with at the spring game a couple months ago. So we just gotta wait and see. But if there was one position that I could choose that's I don't know if they're going to be underestimated by us as much, because I feel like a lot of folks are pleased with our receivers. I am not necessarily pleased. I'm just, I want to see consistency from them before I, start singing a ton of praises. And that could be the corner in me. It could be the corner in me. Anyway, with that being said, I think I'm going to wrap there because I know a lot of folks are probably getting ready for the finals, and the finals are coming on here in under an hour. If you guys are still watching, it will be great if you can let me know in the comments who you think is going to if you think the Mavs got a chance of coming back and turning this around. I hope they do. I definitely bet on the Mavs to win, so it's not looking great for me right now. Anyway, thank you guys for joining. Remember, like the video if you can, to help more people come and join the community and join us for this particular football season. Also, subscribe to the channel if you are new and haven't subscribed yet, and join if you'd like to join as well. That supports the channel. and support some of the efforts that we'll be making going forward as we get into the season. So appreciate you guys for being here, and I will catch up with you same time next week.